because perfection is unreachable. But when you really get down to the bottom of it, integrity and love are not.
Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you.
All right. Welcome back to Coach Soul. I'm Dr. Steve with Kenya, my host, therapeutic. Kenya, it's the month of May and, the flowers are out and blooming and spring is in full force with, animals, giving spring births and what a great way to say a tribute to mothers for Mother's Day in the month of May.
I couldn't be more proud to be a mother. I couldn't be more proud to honor the mothers across all time and space, great-grandmothers, mothers, aunts, and mothers that perhaps don't have children. And I will explain the heart of a woman that is nurturer, and she knows that. Mm-hmm. So I call that also a energetic motherhood, which is the heart of a servant.
My aunt has become like my surrogate mother. There's that rejection from my own mom, and my dad's sister became more like my mom. And that's a fascinating story because in college, there's a guy that she met. They went out. He asked her to marry him. She said no. God has things for me to do. She was an exchange teacher to England, went to Boston to teach. About 20 years later, they meet again. Neither one of them have ever married.
Wow.
They met again. They went out. He wrote her a letter. She said yes, and they've been married ever since. No children. But she has adopted me as her own child, right. And we have this great bond together. So just because you don't have a child naturally does not mean that you're not a mother. Even I've got a friend who had miscarried and has not had a child since. And I explained you're still a mother. And I think sometimes when we think about mothers, they strive for perfectionism in such a way that, when you think about perfectionism, to me, it's that silent thief of mental health.
100%.
Because it demands that flawlessness where, to me, humanity was meant to breathe. When you think about sanctity begins when we lay down the impossible. Mm-hmm. And we choose to honor the mind that carries us through it all.
Yes.
It's challenging that perfectionism in us. And I know as parents, we want to strive to be perfect, be different from our parents. But Kenya, this show is about women.
Yes.
And you know best. You're a mom. Tell us a little bit about what is this perfectionism that women are going through, because in adolescent teenagers, especially girls, 16% of them have a high level of mixed perfectionism compared to boys. What's going on?
Well, we need to start addressing that perfectionism is not a choice. It's a trauma response. Perfectionism is a trauma response, and it's planted on childhood. And there's many factors, and it will affect women more because of our heart. Like, we want to do things right. Not that boys don't. It's just different. The way that God designed us, women, we're connectors. We're nurturers. We just talk about that. And especially if you grew up in a religious environment, there's this good girl theme that feels like good girl equals being flawless. good girls means, and there's one way, one right way, pay attention on that word, the right way of being as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, and that could not be a bigger lie. There's so many ways to be you. As a matter of fact, we're all uniquely made. So through the lenses of perfectionism, I can go on and on and on, and this would be like a series. This would be an entire workshop, to be honest. Make a note. That is a workshop. That perfectionism can come, and I'm not saying that you have all of that. However, when I studied that and I put the mirror in my face, I had all of it, right? As a child, I had conditional love. So as a child, if you see that if you do this right thing, you get rewarded, you get approval, then as a mother, it will show up like if I don't do this right, I will fail my child.
You know, one of the things too, I want to challenge men, because when men are overbearing, that produces also perfectionism, almost to an OCD compulsive disorder, because of the perfectionism that, you know, their fathers are exhibiting. And so, you know, guys, don't just be gentle with your females that are in your life, so that when you think about perfectionism, we all have some sort of degree of perfectionism. Yeah. I have that perfectionism because my dad was 26 years of Air Force.
That's right.
And so I really have worked hard, even though I served 8 years in the military. It's easy to pay attention to detail and to get into that perfectionism. But even in moms, you know, when you think about perfectionism, it gets elevated during postpartum depression as well.
Well, and that brings me to number 2, which is emotional neglect as a child. So as a child, emotional neglect will look like, it will feel like, you know, my feelings don't matter. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. They're going to be whoever they're going to be. And then when you become a mother, you overcorrect. It shows up. It shows up as overcorrectedness, so that she will be so overloaded and overwhelmed that she will abandon herself. The highlight the word abandoning herself. It looks like emotional neglect for self. And once again, for me, this is not just a teaching, a podcast moment, but it's a moment where, wow, I remember seeing myself in every single line of what perfectionism looks like through the lenses of trauma response versus she's just trying to control everything. You know how mom is. And you just, in that, you actually minimize versus what every trauma response is a cry for love. It comes from a place of, I just want to love as is. Let's go back to number 1. I don't remember experiencing unconditional love, but a few moments in life, I could see the glimpse of what unconditional love would look like, but it was mostly 99.9% through the lenses of, if you do this right, you get this. It was a response from beautiful mothers and grandmothers and teachers and pastors that actually was just running the pattern too. And that right there, as we honor moms, all the moms and all the women in the month of May, I want to highlight that this is not just moms, it's human behavior. It just shows up more when you're raising an individual, because we really want to get it right. We want to do better than the previous generation. We want to, if you were spanking every day of your life like I was, then I don't want to repeat that to my children. But right? Notice that, I want to find a way to prune them, to put a mirror of loving guidance, and until you find what works for every kid, the style of parenting that will really move the needle forward in love, not in fear, in love, not in self-abandonment, self-rejection, or sacrificial giving, but knowing that my kids will become parents, my daughter will become a mother. Do you see what I'm saying? So they're watching the way I mother.
Right.
Then I remember to come back to grace for self, knowing that if today I did not have my emotional regulation apart to the way I like seeing myself and the way I know I'm capable, I know that was one day. It's the pattern fading. It's me being human and accepting my humanness and being that unconditional love for self that I wish others would have. So I'm filling up my own bucket and receiving God's love in that moment of grace for self.
It's practicing that self-compassion, and it's replacing the judgment that comes with it with curiosity. Like, why am I demanding perfection of myself? What's the fear that's driving this perfectionism? And, when I talk to a lot of females, especially mothers in my office, they often say, I must be a horrible mother because of my choices and my children. And I'm like, I remind them, because when you think of Samson in Judges 14 and 15, especially is what I like, because, back in that time, the angel of God came down and spoke to Samson's parents. I mean, who wouldn't want a manual of how to operate your kids, so to speak? 100%. And they were given instructions on how to raise him. But in that next chapter, verse 2, I find very powerful, because it's Samson as a young man on the scene. And I'm like, what's behind this writer writing Samson this way? Because it says, hey, mom and dad, go down to the river, bring her that Phoenician woman to make her my bride. And that tells me later on, when he was, gave in to Delilah's whims of how to kill him, it just shows that, as a parent, we can have the best instructions as ever, but these choices often are made by our children because of influence. So just because your child does something other than what you taught them does not mean that you're not a good parent. It just, you just got to be able to start challenging these unrealistic 100%. Standards, right? Who told me this was the only way to be enough? And so it's just realizing, what standards are you placing on yourself? Let's go ahead. Well, I was going to say, name the inner critic, not entertain it, but externalize it. Like, why am I being so perfect? What strives me to be perfect in this? What's the threat that causes me to go there? And so when I think about mothers, especially women, I hear all the time, they get on social media and they begin comparing themselves to other people. But, the scripture says, don't do that, because you're going to fail. But if you look to God, right, for that, that guidance that's there, we're loved and we're perfect in his image. That's the only way we can be perfect, is through his image. Mm-hmm. So, Kenya, what are some ways that women can be able to work on this perfectionism, this critic in them, that can help them to not lose themselves?
100%. Well, knowing that is a trauma response. So what we would dive deep, and I mean right now, is the love. Flooding your body with the love that performance doesn't equal love. Every mother that is listening to me right now knows how much she perform. And the joke is, we do all the things for free, right? And then somebody comes in and is like, hey, what do you do? And I was like, are you serious?
Right.
Are you really serious? Like, you're asking me what I do. That's funny. So honor that to yourself, and take that inner child of yours. Take our inner child on a ride to receive those words of approval that you craved back then, because they don't go away. You see, the inner child still raises her hand. and love when the trigger comes in. See, the alchemy here, the invitation here is when the self-critic comes in and you want to control everything, and you want to, you don't see that you are in perfectionism mode. It's a frequency, and it's an unattainable frequency. You can't do it. That's why it's a doom road, because you can't achieve it. Versus, yes, I am task oriented with love, right? I will feed my children. I will do the laundry. I will do a podcast. I will do the work, and I will take 5 to nurture me, or 10 or 15. And that's where choice is. Okay. When I said perfectionism is not a choice, when I started this podcast with you, I meant, you don't say, yeah, one of my traits is I'm going to choose to be a perfectionism. No, it's a protection mechanism, because if you're perfect, if you control the environment, right? If you grew up on a chaotic environment, what's the trauma response? To control the environment,
right?
To structure the environment in a way that you feel safe. And the way that it shows up is micromanaging, so that you will not have judgment of the kids, others, or God. And guess what happened? We actually don't need any of those judgments, because we're judging ourselves the entire time.
Right.
The perfectionism is judging herself the entire time. The voice is in her head. So we get to say, turn off, turn down, turn down, turn down. We know that those voices are never going to delete themselves, but they can dim in such a way that the voices of truth are louder. The truth that you're doing your best right now, and who you are, who you be, is exquisite. And your children see you and you see them. Now the choice is to have the detachment that my kids performing doesn't mean I'm a good mom. My kids not performing doesn't mean I'm a bad mom. My kids doing well doesn't mean that I'm fantastic. Now you leading yourself in the standard that I accept me in every level of energy, and the kids are watching, especially if you homeschool, yo, then my daughter, my sons, they have the choice now to say, you know what? Mommy had a bad day. She cried, and she brought herself back, and now we're having fun, and we're playing a puzzle game. Mm-hmm. That's real life.
And sometimes I think, what if we start redefining success? Instead of asking or saying, did I do this perfectly? It's asking yourself, did I show up with love? Did I stay true to my values? Because perfection is unreachable. But when you really get down to the bottom of it, integrity and love are not. And so when you think about, it's about honoring the sacredness of your effort, not the outcome. Because when you think in motherhood, in work, and love, it's not the spotless performance that makes you holy. It's that honest effort that she makes. Yeah. Because every scar, every mistake, every moment of realness builds a legacy more than perfection could.
100%.
And it's digging in deep of loving that inner child unconditionally. Because oftentimes, how are we raised? Conditionally in love, sometimes, for the most of us. And when that unconditional is set, when the conditions of love is set, we strive for perfectionism. We strive for approval. We strive for whatever. But, it's like, do we chase after the wind? When reality, right. But it's calming that inner spirit. When I think about mothers, a mother's strength is not measured by how little she struggles, but by how fiercely she loves through the struggles.
That's right.
Grace, not perfection, is what builds a life worth holding.
Yeah. I believe that, and I'm speaking for myself and holding the mirror of the female clients that I have had along the past 15 years of my life. It's very hard to separate motherhood and being a woman. It's all together. It's easier to separate being a wife and being a mother and a woman. This is why a lot of men feel, as soon as she became a mother, things changed. Of course it would.
Right.
Of course it would. And it's in a good way, if you want to bring polarity for good or bad, because you expanded. Now you both have your children to love. But guess what? She's grinding there. Most men are now stay-home dad, and the majority is women that are nurturing the children. So of course she will have less gas in the end of the day. Of course. And not as much need for connection, physical connection, because she's always hugging and kissing and the kids. But the men don't go around kissing and hugging other buddies or their kids. I mean, some men do. They're more connected with animals and children. But do you see how it's not the norm now? Like if you need 6 hugs a day, the woman is giving 35 for each child, at least, when they're little or more. But the man is not at work. Hey, bud, what's going on? Hey, let's go. So her cup is sort of full in that physical kinesthetic connection, if you will. I'm not talking romantic and sensuality. We can go there another time. But there's some misunderstanding about, the kids took my wife away, or the kids. Does it make sense? And for a woman, she's like, hey, I'm here wearing all those hats. Please see me. Please acknowledge me. And then I put a comma. And I want to speak with every woman here. That will never come from the outside. That question right there, please see me, is a childhood trauma, your inner child raising her hand. Once you see you, and you know you, and you make a decision that who you are right now, the adult, the woman, the mother that you are right now, is absolutely enough. Plus, more than enough. And you see yourself, you relax, seeking that approval from the outside, especially from your mate. And I continue in the same sentence, which doesn't mean that it doesn't feel great to hear.
And I want to challenge the men, because men have a play into the women's self-esteem and perfectionism and things like that.
Correct.
I have a client that, we first met, and he says, I'm tired of my wife laying on the couch, scrolling through her phone, not interacting with me. Okay. What else? Well, the dishes, sometimes there's dirty dishes, the dirty floors, the house is unkept. And I said, okay, what needs to change? She does. Oh, really?
Got it.
Okay. Let me ask you, when's the last time you made a meal for her? When's the last time you gone into the kitchen and just cleaned up after her? When's the last time you got at 3 a.m. in the morning and made a bottle? He says, not very much. Okay. Who needs to change? And he lowers his head and says, I do. Mm-hmm. I saw my dad, and that's the best part I love about my dad, was that when my mom was sick, he stepped in. I saw him do dishes. I saw him vacuuming. I saw him do laundry. And yeah, he was a masculine man. He worked on cars, taught me how to work on cars, those type of things too. So he had a great balance about himself. And so, men, I want you to challenge yourself. If you're saying, well, she doesn't have time for me, then give her an excuse not to have time by not doing anything. Women need the acts of service. Majority of the women that I met, their love language has been acts of service. So if you're tired of her coming home and having to cook and clean and not have time for you, it's time to step up. Help them not to wait on you, marriage is about serving. It's not about a tit for tat of 50% here and there, because that's condition. If I give 50%, then I'm expecting you to give 50%.
And if he's not willing to do that, to show up that way, that's fine. Mm-hmm. There's other ways. Remember, there's not just one way. You can be a house cleaner.
Right.
You can figure out which area. Okay, I will help organizing, but I'm really not into cleaning the dishes. Or I will order takeout. Or, figure it out a way to be supportive, because you mentioned the 3 a.m. battle, right? And I want to speak to the mamas that also have children that are no longer in that phase. The need for help would never go away. It just change. It just shift. There is, if you sign up to raise a family, it's there's the me time, and it's very important, but it's the majority of the time is a us time. It's a collective time. It's a building this incredible consciousness called family, the family unit. And
that's where I challenge the men. We get about 2 minutes left. That's where I challenge the men, Kenya, in the fact that to help women not feel so needing to be perfect, most men lack in affirmation of thank you.
I agree.
Thank you for taking care of the kids, cleaning up the vomit. I try to clean up the vomit. I can, but the smell, so it gets to me. It's just a reflux.
Find
for
something
me.
else. Find something else to be supportive.
So I'm going to say thank you and being appreciative of that. Mm-hmm. But there's so much more that as men can do to help women not feel so needed in perfectionism. And women, when you think about what we call gray divorce, they're not finding happiness, so they leave and try to find happiness somewhere else. But men will sacrifice themselves, no matter how badly they're treated, for the female. And because it's that deep love. And if men would treat their women in a regard that's honoring, that's what's important, to help them to reduce that perfectionism and increase that ability to have self-love. And so, we're going to end it here. We're going to pick it up next week.
For now.
Because we've got Mother's Day coming, and I really would like to carry this on about mothers and the impact they have made. So until next time, take care.
So much love. See you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact a crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship or personal advice. Please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.